All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're ready because we are here and it is time, and you don't have to think about it because it is right here and it is right now. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Time to dive deeper into the lost wisdom of the Pharaohs because it is Wednesday wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. Wisdom Wednesday. I wonder if I should switch that around. I always call it Wednesday wisdom. Nah, that's funner to say. All right. Wednesday wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Today we will be discussing the being of Atum. And in this chapter, Hermes attempts to describe God. And we've done a lot of that on this channel. Even in yesterday's video, we're always attempting to describe the nature of what God really could be or what God really is. Although God cannot be defined with words, we are reminded, Hermes gives some clues for us to contemplate. And that's what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. If you remember back to the first thing Hermes said in the prophecies of Hermes, is that pure philosophy is spiritual striving through constant contemplation. And so we are continuing to search for clues for us to contemplate, ladies and gentlemen. Because the first line it says here is God is oneness. God is oneness, ladies and gentlemen. So we are reading from the Hermetica, The Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs by Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy. It's a Tarsher Cornerstone edition for purposes of teaching and commentary and expanding the mind, and so that we may discover not only new things for ourselves, but new things that may impact the lives of those around us in our world. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right in here to what Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy have to say about Hermes' section on the being of Atum. It's very fascinating, ladies and gentlemen. So, like I said, it begins by saying, quote, God is oneness. Everything is part of one supreme being. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, as we go through this and all the different things that we've gone through and will continue to go through in the future, in the past and in the future, which is all really the now, right? But keep in mind that there's different ways to describe a lot of similar things. That's why I was saying yesterday on how Lao Tzu said the whole world talks about this Tao. And I think that, there are many different ways to describe the same thing from a lot of different perspectives and viewpoints that sometimes have different titles and names, like this perspective coming at it from the title of Atum. But to say that something is a force or an energy source or, life force in the Tao does not mean that calling that same thing oneness or one supreme being means that it's not the same thing. This is all open for debate and contemplation. So, but I always do sometimes get wrapped up on the beingness or the entityness of God as compared to a force. But once again, it could be talking about the same thing using different descriptions. As I said, since God cannot be defined with words, Hermes is giving us some clues for us to contemplate. The nature of God, ladies and gentlemen. What is God? And how can we continue to meditate and think on that, and contemplate on that, to come closer to connecting to that which we already are connected to, which is a paradox in its own way, but that's how you know you're on the trail, ladies and gentlemen. Because if you are already it, and it is already you, then you don't really need to connect to it. You already are connected. Then what do you need to do to, fully activate that capacity? And see, even some traditions would say you are already doing that automatically. You are being done. You are not doing anything. You are being done. But they see these are all fascinating things that go into this study. And so, like it was saying, like the number one, the book continues, which is the source of all subsequent numbers. God is the source of all. Yet just as when the number 1 is divided or multiplied by itself, it remains 1. See, that's a powerful lesson there. It's a powerful metaphor to help people to understand oneness and the source in relation to what is God. And so God is the source of all, like the number 1, which is the source of all subsequent numbers after it. God is this number 1, the source of all subsequent things after it. Yet just as when the number 1 is divided or multiplied by itself, it remains 1. So God constantly, or the source, or the force, or Tao, or whatever that be for you, God, constantly remains the oneness, the source. Because, the book continues, and as I go through this, I'll be reading and then paraphrasing in my own words, once again, for purposes of expanding the mind, so that we may learn. And of course, I enjoy a little commentary on this because it allows us to contemplate deeper. So because it says here he, but we can say it, she, whatever we want to put there, because it unites everything. Its name is paradoxical. It is the creator who creates itself. It is always hidden from us, yet it is also the world around us. See, this is what I was saying about the verse of the Tao yesterday. It's like, you will not find it in the supermarkets, or, the father will not pass it down to son. But at the same time, I was like, it's paradoxical in the way that you will not go there and find it, but it is there, even though you cannot see it. And even though the father will not pass it down to the son, it is within both of them in this paradoxical way. Its nature is paradoxical. It is the creator who creates itself. So it is always hidden from us, yet it is also the world around us. So it is also everything. So if you can, and that is part of the purpose of this Hermetic philosophy, this ancient Hermetic spiritual philosophy coming from Hermes here, which many would deem as, many would deem as occult and esoteric, and some would even call it pagan wisdom traditions. But we know, ladies and gentlemen, that we're getting at spiritual philosophy here. At least that's the purpose of what I'm doing in this series. And so some people like to go in different directions with things. So this is fascinating, though. We're already learning a lot. It has no particular name because all names refer to it, because it is, and I'm paraphrasing again here now, because it is also everything that we see. And so to give it a particular name like God or Atum or Source or Tao or whatever it be for you, Great Spirit, those are, once again, just descriptions of, it has no particular name because all names refer to it. So hope you got yourself a beverage, ladies and gentlemen. I forgot to say that in the beginning. Some good tea, but it is the tea. That's what I was going to say. And don't spill the tea, ladies and gentlemen. Be careful. Now, the tea says today, the unknown is where all outcomes are possible. Enter it with grace. The unknown is where all outcomes are possible. Enter it with grace. And so this is getting deeper. This is fascinating, and we are understanding some of what we already discuss often here on this channel. So if you've been here before, you're like, yes, this is just kind of a reminder here. But this is the third section here in the works of Hermes, that have been condensed from greater texts for an introductory version to this inspirational spiritual philosophy. And so once again, we're in the third section here of Hermes attempting to describe God, Atum, in the Hermetic traditions. And so we get to the idea of this one supremeness, the oneness that is divided or multiplied, but always remains one. So it is everything, while at the same time the source of everything. And there is no name for it because all names refer to it. And then it continues here. God is the supreme mind. A lot of this stuff, a lot of this spiritual, a lot of these spiritual lessons and philosophies and understandings and different wisdom traditions always come back to the use of the mind and the importance of the mind and where we, place our attention and how we choose to use our mind and all of these things that have to do with the mind. So begin learning about how you can become, better, more skilled, create an ability to use your mind, change your thoughts, change your life. So God is the one supreme being. No, the one supreme mind. See, that word being always throws me off there. That was what it said earlier. Is part, so God, everything is part of one supreme being. So number one is the source of all the numbers. And then down here it's saying now God is the supreme mind. And we talked about that earlier in this series as well, in the section titled The Mind of God. So at the heart of Hermes' teachings is one simple idea. God is a big mind. Everything which exists is a thought within the mind of God. So this book is a thought in the mind of God. This video is a thought within the mind of God, your body. And these ideas, which are being discussed, are thoughts in the mind of God. How can we understand this? Well, consider for a moment, it said, if you were here on the video where we did this, and this is just a refresher, consider for a moment your own experience, ladies and gentlemen. Thoughts and feelings exist within your mind, too. And you know the outer world around you because your senses give you information which you also then experience within your mind, so when your mind is completely unconscious, you don't experience anything. Ultimately, everything that exists in your life is a thought within your mind. Your mind, however, is limited by being trapped in a physical body. So imagine for a moment that it isn't. Imagine that it's free to be conscious of everything at all times and in all places. So time and space become less relevant, and you can go any place, anytime, and you're not constricted by our physical nature. And so then everything that is and has been and will be would exist as a thought capable for you to bring up within your mind. This is the nature, from the Hermetic perspective, of God's mind. So we are like a microcosm trapped in our physical body of the macrocosm of the mind of God that is not trapped in a physical body. What does this mean? Again, look at your own experience. You experience many different things, but right now, you are listening to this video, ladies and gentlemen. But before that, you may have been doing different things, eating, walking, or any number of things, yet all of those different things are experienced by one thing. Your mind in this case. It is the oneness that unites all of your experience. In the same way, God's mind, the mind of God, is the oneness which unites everything. Hopefully, we're putting down a understandable yet deep and explanatory attempt to define, even though we know that God cannot be defined with words, the Tao that is named is not the eternal Tao. But we're giving some clues for what Hermes recommends at the very beginning of his teachings, which is pure philosophy is through spiritual striving and constant contemplation of these subjects, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you're getting value. And if you are, consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed, then thank you very much. Maybe I'll send you a free landscape painting in the future. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So this is fascinating. And I always love how, because a lot of people like to relate to the Christian teaching of, you know, God created man in his own image or their own image. See, there's different translations that you can take it as a plural or a singular, and then a masculine or feminine, but that's off where we're going with this. It's just this idea that we were created in the image or a micro version of God or the gods. And so, being that we're talking about source here, recognize that there are minor gods, characters that play different roles in the hierarchies of the different densities, the different realms that exist, which I know not a great amount about. That's an area that I could research more in. But we're talking about the overarching source of all, God. Grand organized design, as some people put it, God. But we were getting at the idea of the supreme mind that is everywhere and always. And so the human mind, this is why I was referencing we are, the Christian philosophy is that we are created in the image of God. The human mind is an image of the supreme mind. So there are many areas where you can see that the canon or the doctrines of the New Testament, and probably the Old Testament too, going back to last week's episode about the initiation of Hermes, which was so good. If you missed that one, go back and get that one. That one's holy cow. Talk about Hermes seeing this vision of the creation, which is similar to what is described in Genesis. And so, see, there's these connections. It's almost like there was some kind of plagiarism going on, or maybe how some people say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So maybe, I doubt anyways, I doubt the people at the Council of Nicaea were trying to give any sort of flattery towards what they deemed as heretic and ancient pagan, traditions that they tried to wipe out, and until today have kept us from being interested in because they said it was evil. But ladies and gentlemen, there is darkness and there is light in all corners here in the physical realm, and it is up for us to choose between the darkness and the light and not be convinced into thinking and seeing what they want us to think and see. So, with that being said, the power of the imagination, you can roam the universe and be like God in all times and places. So, this is, once again, God is the supreme mind, and then we laid down the relationship and how that makes sense to our mind and the mind of God is everywhere and always. And our mind is an image of this supreme mind. Through the power of imagination, it can roam the universe and be like God in all times and all places. Hermes tells us that if we truly understood the extraordinary power of the human mind, we would then know the nature of God. I love that sentiment right there, because it is so powerful, the mind, our minds, and our imagination, and how we choose to use it. And if any of us, how many people do you know that spend time, I don't even know how to phrase it, working out their mind, practicing building the strength of your mind? And there's many different ways to do that. And I think intellectual knowledge is maybe one of the traps that we've been led to think, yes, the way to have a strong mind is to be very knowledgeable in, intellectual things as far as academia goes. But we know, ladies and gentlemen, now, luckily it's obvious at this point in time and at this point in mind that we were trapped and duped and brainwashed and tricked into believing that certain things were important when actually we were missing the mark, ladies and gentlemen. Academia has been throwing us the wrong way, but that is my personal opinion. Luckily, it's more obvious than it's ever been before. And so it's up to us to begin to become, as Campbell puts it, autodidactic or self-educated. Because if we just take everything we're told as the way that things are, and we never look for ourselves to discover our own answers, then we will be led by whoever it is that we believe in the first place. And so don't take my word for all of this. That's why I keep referencing what Hermes says is content strategy. No, I'm kidding. Constant contemplation, ladies and gentlemen. Meditation. We need to meditate on these things and think about it. And it is a beautiful day where I am, ladies and gentlemen. It is nice and warm. I hope it is beautiful where you are. I hope everybody's doing well. A shout out to A1 and a shout out to Gorilla Press and a shout out to everybody else who joins me here on the premiere and in the future in leaving comments. I really appreciate it. Your support means a lot to me. It keeps me doing these videos and sharing this kind of wisdom, the wisdom of the ages, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we're going to get into the section, the being of Atum, here in a second, because the words of Hermes are always most fascinating, and they take me, and hopefully all of us, on a journey. And so, Hermes tells us, where we left off, that if we truly understood the extraordinary power of the human mind, our minds, ladies and gentlemen, we would then know, not know about, but know the nature of God. Everything exists as an idea within the mind of God. It creates all things, and in the same way that our own minds create thoughts, just as the nature of the mind is to think, so is the nature of God is to create. Remember, your mind is a small version doing the same thing. So when you are thinking, you are also eventually creating. He's doing it. It is doing it continuously too. So we are doing it whether we like it or not. So once again, be careful with your mind. God is constantly creating creation and will never stop because it is the nature, just like it is the nature of our minds to think. God is both the material objects around us and the immaterial, including the thoughts in our minds. I'll add, as well as the electric and magnetic and electromagnetic forces and all the rest of the things that we don't see but experience in reality that science describes. But, ladies and gentlemen, as we're seeing here, everyone is describing the same thing. So even science is describing this force from a different way. And so the world we see and sense is an illusion, however, compared to the great ideas which only exist in the mind. Above all are the ideas of goodness and beauty. These qualities belong to God alone. They can at best be found imperfectly in the material world, but exist in all their perfection in the immaterial world of the mind. They are so perfect that God is in love with them. God is in love with itself, himself, herself, however you describe that for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we should also be in love with ourselves. I was also saying yesterday, if you don't have love, if you don't love yourself, which if you don't, then remember that you are divine and you have a spark of divinity within. You are a part of all of this that we've been describing here, this force, this Tao, this life energy, this oneness. You are it. You're not even a part of it because you are it. And so you are not separate at all from God. So just knowing that should allow you to begin to love yourself and say, wow, I am really divine. I am really God. I've just been missing the mark, and I need to find how I can begin to align with the way, with harmony, and begin to change my thoughts and change my life. So I'm tempted to save it for the future, ladies and gentlemen, but let's run through here without taking another hour like we do sometimes. I know we go a long time sometimes, but it's fun for me. So let's dive into here. Hermes' words on the nature of God, entitled The Being of Atum. And Atum, translating to God, pretty much. So whenever you hear that word Atum, that is the Hermetic or ancient Egyptian reference to the one supreme force, as I like to call it, or the one supreme God. The being of Atum. Hermes begins by saying, quote, "Give me your whole awareness and concentrate your thoughts. For knowledge of Atum's being requires deep insight, which comes only as a gift of grace. It is like a plunging torrent of water, whose swiftness outstrips any man who strives to follow it, leaving behind not only the hearer, but even the teacher himself. To convince of Atum, no, to conceive of Atum is difficult. To define him is impossible. The imperfect and impermanent cannot easily apprehend the eternally perfected. Atum is whole and constant. In himself he is motionless, yet he is self-moving. He is immaculate, incorruptible, and everlasting. He is the supreme, absolute reality. He is filled with ideas, which are imperceptible to the senses. With all embracing knowledge, Atum is primal mind. He is too great to be called by the name Atum. He is hidden, yet obvious everywhere. His being is known through thought alone. Yet we see his form before our eyes. He is bodiless, yet embodied in everything. There is nothing which he is not. He has no name, because all names are his name. He is the unity in all things. So we must know him by all names and call everything Atum. He is the root and source of all. Everything has a source, except the source itself, which springs from nothing. Atum is complete, like the number one, which remains itself, whether multiplied or divided, and yet generates all numbers. Atum is the whole, which contains everything. He is one, not two. He is all, not many. The all is not many separate things, but the oneness that subsumes the parts. The all and the one are identical. You think that things are many when you view them as separate. But when you see they all hang on the one and flow from the one, you will realize that they are united, linked together, and connected by a chain of being from the highest to the lowest, all subject to the will of Atum. The cosmos is one, as the sun is one, the moon is one, and the earth is one. Do you think there are many gods? That's absurd. God is one. Atum alone is the creator of all that is immortal and all that is mutable. If that seems incredible, just consider yourself. You see, speak, hear, touch, taste, walk, think, and breathe. It is not a different you who does these various things, but one being who does them all. To understand how Atum makes all things, consider a farmer sowing seeds. Here wheat, there barley, now planting a vine, then an apple tree. Just as the same man plants all these seeds, so Atum sows immortality in heaven and change on the earth. Throughout the cosmos, he disseminates life and movement, the two great elements that comprise Atum and his creation, and so everything that is. Atum is called Father because he begets all things, and from his example, the wise hold begetting children, the most sacred pursuit of human life. Atum works with nature, with the laws of necessity, causing extinction and renewal, constantly creating creation to display his wisdom. Yet the things that the eye can see are mere phantoms and illusions. Only those things invisible to the eye are real. Above all the ideas of beauty and goodness, just as the eye cannot see the being of Atum, so it cannot see these great ideas. They are attributes of Atum alone and are inseparable from him. They are so perfectly without blemish that Atum himself is in love with them. There is nothing which Atum lacks, so nothing that he desires. There is nothing that Atum can lose, so nothing can cause him grief. Atum is everything. Atum makes everything. And everything is a part of Atum. Atum therefore makes himself. This is Atum's glory. He is all creative and things, and this creating is his very being. It is impossible for him to ever stop creating, for Atum can never cease to be. Atum is everywhere. Mind cannot be enclosed because everything exists within mind. Nothing is so quick and powerful. Just look at your own experience. Imagine yourself in any foreign land, and quick as your intention, you will be there. Think of the ocean, and there you are. You have not moved as things move, but you have traveled nevertheless. Fly up into the heavens. You won't need wings. Nothing can obstruct you. Not the burning heat of the sun or the swirling planets. Pass on to the limits of creation. Do you want to break out beyond the boundaries of the cosmos? For your mind, even that is possible. Can you sense what power you possess? If you can do all this, then what about your creator? Try and understand that Atum is mind. This is how he contains the cosmos. All things are thoughts, which the creator thinks. And that is the end of what Hermes says there in that section entitled The Being of Atum and the Thoughts on the Nature of God from Hermes and Thoth. Hermes Trismegistus. Wow, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. That is incredibly put. I'm almost left speechless because I've talked about this before many times. We even, like I said earlier, mentioned it yesterday. In yesterday's video, and probably at least half of the videos we've done on this channel. If not briefly or more in depth, this attempt, much like it said earlier, this attempt to describe God like Hermes was doing and Thoth, but although we know that, you know, the Tao that is named is not the eternal Tao, just like it was saying in all of this teaching here, that you cannot give a name to it because it is all names and it is all things. And it cannot be contained. That was just very deep. Let's run through real quick before we finish up here and see what we can glean from that incredible section. So once again, in the beginning, it's talking about awareness. Give me your whole attention and concentrate your thoughts. I think it's almost said that every section now. Let's check. Yeah, in the vision, his senses were suspended by a conscious emptiness. And so he was alert. And he released and flew with his thoughts. See, so his whole vision was what was being described here at the end of this section about astral travel, I believe, but using your thoughts very simply to fly and go wherever you want. Because as Hermes said, you don't need wings to fly up into the sky with your mind. And your mind can do all of this. I think this is one of the things that makes us very unique here, is we're physical beings with this mind, miniature mind of God ability, that we can literally experience non-physical experiences, like instant travel with our mind. That, you know, I think we have this unique ability with mind here. But so it's a whole lot to take in. Pours plunging of torrent of water, because it is really deep. It almost left me speechless there. To conceive of Atum is very difficult. Yes, self-moving, all-embracing, primal mind, hidden but obvious everywhere. His being is known through thought alone, but we see his form before our eyes, bodiless, but embodied in everything. Is the unity in all things, so we must know him by all names and call everything Atum, Tao, Source, Ra. And see, it used the term him a lot here, the masculine, and it used the description of the Father, which I find interesting. Again, those things are all up for debate and deeper contemplation, ladies and gentlemen, so it's just fine. Because mother begets all things as well as father does, so. But see, in the Egyptian philosophies, traditions, mother probably plays a different role. And so that's why this takes much more research. And I am no master in, you know, the ancient Egyptian mythologies and the structure of all their gods. I'm just learning what I can as I go along in my journey, ladies and gentlemen, because my goal is this pure philosophy, the spiritual philosophy and understanding, so that we may create an ability in our lives to have a much higher quality of life through that ability, through that awareness, through that knowledge. And so that we can have a better life, more peace, more joy, more success, more satisfaction, all of the things we're out here searching for, so often striving outside of ourselves to get, rather than going inside. So, ladies and gentlemen, and then it goes like the description in the beginning gave us. The description in the beginning did a really good job at describing this. Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy, thumbs up on that description on the section of the being of Atum. They did very well. And so credit to them, once again, the authors of this book here. And so it goes through talking about he is one, not two, all, not many, but all things flow from the one and hang on to the one. You will realize they are united and linked together like a chain of being from the highest to the lowest. The cosmos is one. See, this part stood out to me. Do you think there are many gods? ? Hermes asks. And then he said, that's absurd. But then a few lines later, he goes, God is one, Atum alone is the creator of all that is immortal. So does that mean there are lower level entities that may, that are below this force, this creative, the mind of God, that are within the mind of God as thoughts in the mind of God? We would experience them as maybe interdimensional beings or astral beings, or things that can be non-physical and physical at different times by will, but the gods, or maybe even represented by the qualities or characteristics the planets exude and the influence the planets have. And so are the planets the gods that are immortal? And isn't it weird that Hermes was talking about the moon is one and the earth is one and the cosmos is one, and he talks about the planets back in the creation or the initiation of Hermes, which was the vision of Hermes of creation. But I just thought that section stood out to me there about him saying that's absurd, God is one. Well, of course, so that means these lower level things that we deem as gods from our perspective may not quite be what we think them as, but just as much respect to the archetypes. Now, of all that is immortal and mutable, if that seems incredible, just consider yourself. And it goes through what we do, speak, hear, touch, breathe, all coming from one being, ourselves. So then it goes into, understanding how Atum is creation. It goes through the farmer planting different seeds. And then it says, Atum sows immortality in heaven and change on earth. Fascinating. He disseminates life and movement, which are the two great elements. That might be a key to take note on, the two great elements being life and movement. Atum works with nature, causing extinction and renewal. See, those also seem like two great elements. Going back to, let me grab it real quick. It'll be perfect for reference. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So what I was just connecting to in my mind there was the 7 Hermetic principles, or what some describe as the, right here, legend, semi-divine figures. You're talking about Hermes Trismegistus. This is coming from the Kabbalion. And so just a little reference there. Well, we might get into this more later, but it ties right into what we're learning. So if you want more reference. Anyways, the 7 Hermetic principles. Hermes Trismegistus is often identified, and we already know this if you've been here, but if you don't know, Hermes is often identified with both the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth, or Thoth, depending how you pronounce that, Thoth. And so, according to the 7 basic principles, which it says, form the basis of occult philosophy. Number 1, mentalism. So this will relate to what we're talking about here today, so that's why I figured I'd do this. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Number 2, correspondence, as above, so below. So the mind of God and our minds, kind of microcosm, macrocosm thing. And as below, so above. Vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, and everything vibrates. Number 4, polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles, and everything has its pair of opposites. Number 5, rhythm. Everything flows out and in, has tides, and all things rise and fall. Number 6, cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. I think that's referring to natural law. Number 7, finally, gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. See, so there are different planes beyond just the physical plane, ladies and gentlemen. So, having that being referenced, it's making me wonder what made me think of that. This cycle of extinction and renewal, and the ideas of cause and effect, and correspondence, and polarity, and rhythm. See, all of those things are other descriptions of extinction and renewal, constantly creation, a constantly cycling process that is necessary. And so yet the things that the eye can see, and this is where it gets deep, are mere phantoms and illusions. Only the things invisible to the eye are real. Above all are the ideas of beauty and goodness. And see, remember, this is one of the purposes of life, is to be able to see that creation is God, or force, or Tao, or Atum, or source, and then know that, come to know that, and begin to see it, rather than, you find what you see in the world. So rather than looking for negativity and bad things and all the darkness that the news wants us to focus on, and so many people get trapped in, but by seeing the beauty and the harmony of God and force, Atum and Tao, and then loving and appreciating that, and then tending to it. And that is the purpose of life. Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. Coming from at least what I have gotten so far in my little research over the past few years, probably 6 now, but anyways, of this ancient Hermetic, ancient Egyptian, esoteric, occult, mystical wisdom tradition. And so this has been incredible, ladies and gentlemen. There is nothing which Atum lacks, nothing that God can lose. See, there's a lesson for ourselves. If there is nothing that we lack, then there is nothing that we desire. And I think it was Buddha's philosophy. All your troubles stem from your desire. So less desire, less struggle. No desire, no struggle. I think it's, worded a little differently, but that's the lesson there, is like less desires, less suffering. More desires, more suffering. And so if there's nothing that you desire, as Atum is described here, then there is nothing you lack, and you have no struggle. Yet there is nothing that Atum can lose, and so nothing can cause him grief. It could be a personal philosophy to try to implement in our own lives. All creative, creating. It's impossible for him to ever stop creating, much like it's impossible for us to ever stop thinking. So, and then it goes on this astral travel bit, or the bit about how powerful our mind is. Because everything exists within your mind. If we can control our minds, which is most difficult unless you practice, which is one of the lesson number 1s, is practice controlling your mind. But it goes, think of the ocean. It's like, just look at your own experience. Imagine yourself in any foreign land, and as quick as your intention, remember, intention is one of the keys, you will be there, whether it's the ocean. You have not moved as things move. but you have traveled nevertheless. Nothing can obstruct you, not even the burning heat of the sun or the swirling of the planets. Pass on to the limits of creation. It says, do you want to break out beyond the boundaries of the cosmos? What great words of Hermes. Which makes me think of what our T said today. The unknown is where all outcomes are possible. And so enter it with grace. Do not go blundering wildly with no mercy and harmony and grace into the unknown, or you will be met with trouble, ladies and gentlemen. And then finally, it's reminding us, can you sense what power you possess? We are powerful. You are powerful, ladies and gentlemen, because we are a part of this Tao, this force, this Atum. And you should know this, because if we can do all this, and if we can even try and understand that Atum is mind, all things and thoughts are possible, ladies and gentlemen, and everything is possible. And the next section, next Wednesday on Wednesday Wisdom, is contemplating creation. Contemplating creation, ladies and gentlemen. In this chapter, next week, Hermes teaches us how we can see God by contemplating its creation. That is the world that we see around us. And that I am super excited for, because that's the purpose of life, where it gives some real meaning and sense of direction and purpose in life and clarity, is to come to know and see God and then appreciate it. I'm looking forward to that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, whoops, forgot to put my bookmark in, ladies and gentlemen. The being of Atum. That is a description of God. What is God? The nature of God. I do a lot of videos with those kind of titles, but it's worth it. Hopefully it was somebody who's trying to figure out what the heck God is. Like, what in the heavens? What, once you start asking those deeper questions, you're like, what's the meaning of life? What really is God? Maybe that should be the title. What really is God? I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate all of you for being here and joining me with Dr. Wayne Dyer on Tuesdays, and Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy and Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes and Thoth, here on Wednesdays with the Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs, and all the wonderful authors and poets that were in the series The Wisdom of the Ages, which is also on my channel. So that was a fascinating one, kind of how we started doing these Wednesday videos, along with the Tuesday Down, Wednesday Wisdom of the Ages, now Wednesday Wisdom of the Pharaohs, ladies and gentlemen. So be sure to expand the description below. Find yourself a link to my landscape paintings, as well as a link to C60 Purple Power and the book itself, so you can get it for yourself to follow along for reference in the future and for deeper, constant contemplation, ladies and gentlemen. And remember to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and a greater understanding of the reality we find ourselves in. Seek to discover the hidden mysteries of history and the wisdom of the ages, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Oh, yeah. And also remember to make happiness the way, because there is no way to happiness. It is the way. So if it can be the thing that we begin to bring to life, then the goals that we've been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get there, but I can't be happy now here, that becomes irrelevant because we already are there. And then the entire journey should be wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate all of you. We'll be back next Tuesday, Tuesday Tao, and some more Wisdom of the Ages, Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs on Wednesday. And in between now and then, I'll do some short videos probably, so be sure to look out for those, ladies and gentlemen. All righty. Until next time, be the change you want to see. Be the example in the world out there for other people. And maybe we can begin to make a change. No, 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 no.